Gorpanima is 2 days away. I thought we could sing a bhajan glorifying Lord Chaitanya. If that's okay with all of you. Goranga bolite have Ulaka Sharia Hari Hari bolite Ane Babe Nira
Krishna Karuna
Yasya kripa sindhu eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nandalilaya Maya Vigrahaya Hemamba Divya Chavisundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Hare Krishna. It's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you in Bangalore. And as we draw near to Gaur Purnima, we take the time to reflect on the various characteristics of Mahaprabhu's personality. But as Gaur Govinda Maharaj used to say, that when one dives into the ocean of Gaur Tattva, they don't know which way to go. To look left or to look to right, they don't know which way to go. So, luckily, by the guidance of the devotees, a topic was already chosen. So, the topic that was chosen by the devotees here was the preaching spirit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the preaching spirit of Srila Prabhupada. So I chose a section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita which particularly highlights what does it mean to preach Krishna consciousness. And we'll read over those, and then I have two purports from that section that we'll go over. There's many purports in this particular section, but due to lack of time, we can't speak about all of them. Speaking of time, when do we finish? Time does the class go till? 9 o'clock? 9:30. Okay, well maybe we'll read all the verses. Okay. Okay, text. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7, text 80. Pangala hailon ami darya nahimane etanchite nivadilun guru racharane. Translation. I saw that I had become mad by chanting the holy name, and I immediately submitted this at the lotus feet of my spiritual master. So, to give a background on what's going on in this particular section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu is meeting with the Mayavadi sannyasis of Varanasi, and they do still exist there, actually. Maybe not as many as that time, but they're still there. Mahaprabhu is meeting with the Mayavadi sannyasis because up till this time, he has been chanting and dancing in the land of Kashi, and the Mayavadi sannyasis there have been very critical of his activities. Who is this young 24-year-old or between 24 and 30-year-old sannyasi chanting and dancing like a sentimentalist? And not only that, he's taking prasadam in the home of Sudras, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every day he would go to the house of Tapana Mishra, which, by the way, Tapana Mishra's house is still there, and you can go and have darshan of this place. It's a very special place because this is the place where Mahaprabhu first met Sanatana Goswami. And that corridor which that Sanatana Goswami walked through to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the courtyard of Tapana Mishra, everything's still intact. And it's very visceral, actually, going to that place, because you can really feel the foundation of the Krishna consciousness movement in that interaction. Sanatana Goswami is the Sambandha Acharya. So the conversations which took place between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami are of extreme importance for us, because I often think about the process of Krishna consciousness as building a kind of house, a house in the spiritual world. And in order to build a house properly, you need to have a foundation. So the process of Krishna consciousness is the process of building the house of prema. And the foundation for this house of prema is Sambandha Gyan. And unless we're properly situated in Sambandha Gyan, then we can't actually begin to build the house of prema. So, anyways, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been staying in Varanasi, and the sannyasis of Varanasi are very critical and envious of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, this was very much paining the heart of Chandrasekhar Acharya and Tapana Mishra, because they couldn't stand that their Lord and Master was being criticized in an unjust way. So they were begging Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to please do something about this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really had no interest in getting involved with them. But because he saw his devotees were in distress, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was willing to take on that service of meeting with the Mayavadi sannyasi. So on that particular day, the Maharashtrian Brahmana, he came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and requested that you please come to my home and meet with these Mayavadi sannyasis, which, by the way, the place that they met is also still there, and you can also go see that and beg for blessings. And so is the Bindu Madhava temple. All these places are still intact in Varanasi, and you can go there whenever you're there and have darshan of these places. They're very wonderful places. And one of the best places for doing Harinam Sankirtan and book distribution in the entire world is in Varanasi, because you have people from all over India coming there for a spiritual purpose, and they're all in one place, Dashashvamedha God. And so if you just have some books, and if you have a Harinam party going, you can get a lot of people to chant, and a lot of people will buy books from you. So anyways, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to meet with the sannyasis, and as soon as he approached the sannyasis, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu washed his feet, as is customary whenever you walk into an august assembly, or any assembly, you wash your feet before you enter. So Mahaprabhu washed his feet, but instead of getting up and walking into the assembly, he just sat down in that place. So you can imagine how bewildering that would be. We just think about our ISKCON movement. Some temples, I don't know if this one does, I didn't see one, but some temples have a foot washing station. So in Mayapur, previously you could enter through that side gate. You know what I'm talking about? There was that side gate. It's closed now, it's only for pujaris. Previously you could go through that side gate, and then on your way in, you can wash your feet there. So you can imagine a sannyasi in our movement walking to the temple, washes his feet there, and he just sits down. You have to put these things into perspective to kind of get a picture of what would the mood be like in order to fully imbibe what's the pastime. Because really, these pastimes are meant for our own elevation. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusyam deham ashrita. Bhajante tadrasi krita yat shrutva tat paropavet. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna, for that matter, they display pastimes in this world in the form of a human for the purpose of attracting the minds of people. And they do this specifically through displaying pastimes. And then when devotees or anyone hears about those pastimes, yat shrutva tat parobhavet, that one accepts those pastimes and one develops a desire that I want to enter into these pastimes. So the process of Krishna consciousness, specifically following in the line of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is the process of entering into Gaura Lila through Sankirtan. Through the Sankirtan activities of the Krishna consciousness movement, we are actually participating in Gaura Lila. There's a purport in which Srila Prabhupada explains that anyone who is fully engaged in the missionary activities of the Krishna consciousness movement is to be considered a Nitya Siddha. So you're all very much engaged in the preaching activities of expanding Krishna consciousness in Bangalore. So that means you're all Nitya Siddhas, according to Srila Prabhupada. And you're Nitya Siddhas because you're assisting in the preaching activities of the Sankirtan movement, which are non-different from the activities that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed amongst his associates 500 years ago. When Krishna comes and displays his pastimes, the pastimes, they close. It's like a lotus. It opens, and then when the night falls, the lotus closes. But in Gaura Lila, the pastimes are going on even till today. And that's why we see people from the West taking up to Krishna consciousness, people from tribes in the hills of, I think it's called Arunachala Pradesh. Is that what it's called? So that's why we see all these different types of people taking to Krishna consciousness. People from China, people from Russia, people from Japan. Even a Srimad Bhagavatam set this year was distributed in Antarctica. So what are these activities? These are the activities of the Sankirtan movement. And Narottam Das Thakur explains that when you dive into the ocean of these pastimes of Gaura Lila, and you completely give yourself to the ocean of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, then what happens is you dive into that ocean and you're drowned in that ocean by Lord Nityananda. And then when Lord Nityananda allows you to come up from the ocean, you come out on the other side on the shores of Vrindavan amongst the associates of Radha and Krishna. So these preaching activities of the Sankirtan movement and the pastimes of Gaura Lila, we should fully imbibe the mood that's taking place in them. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has sat in the foot wash area. And he's done this to teach us how to preach. The secondary consideration was to attract the Mayavadi sannyasis. But the primary consideration of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displaying this pastime of sitting in the foot wash area is to teach us what is the mood of a preacher. The mood of a preacher is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sits down, and then Prakashananda Saraswati, who is the leader of the Mayavadi sannyasis, he comes up and he says, "Your Holiness, please come. Don't sit there. Please come." And first, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed this beautiful Brahman effulgence, which the Mayavadi sannyasis had never experienced before, and they were completely enchanted. And then Prakashananda Saraswati, being attracted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's effulgence, came up to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he offered his hand. Said, "Please, my Holiness, please come sit with us." And by this act, Prakashananda Saraswati unknowingly began the beginning of his devotional life. He acquired what is known as Bhakti Mukhi Sukriti. So this is how the activities of the Krishna consciousness movement expand, is that devotees engage in various transcendental tricks in order to attract the conditioned souls. We distribute prasadam and people just think that we're engaging in charity activities of feeding the poor. Or we distribute books and they think that we're just businessmen selling books in the street. We go out and we do Harinam Sankirtan and they just think that we're adding a nice musical accompaniment to their Saturday night activities. But actually what we're doing is we're distributing Bhakti and Mukhi Sukriti to the world, and we're qualifying people to participate in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. So Prakashananda Saraswati, by accepting Lord Chaitanya into the assembly of the Mayavadi sannyasis, he acquired some Bhakti and Mukhi Sukriti, and this qualified him and the rest of the sannyasis to hear from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asked, "You're dancing in the streets and you're singing and dancing all over Varanasi, and you don't even come and sit and take prasadam with us. What's the deal?" So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "I will speak, but as long as you don't become disturbed." So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the way he convinced the Mayavadis of Benares was through his humility. And this is the lesson that we take from this. This is the primary consideration of this pastime, is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is displaying the mood of a preacher, that the preacher should be extraordinarily humble. And through this humility, people become enchanted because it's completely diametrically opposite to the interactions they're used to having in this world. So the devotees go out in a very humble and submissive way, and through their devotional qualities, they're able to attract the public. So Prakashananda Saraswati and the Mayavadis of Varanasi, they're asking the question, why are you doing this? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to explain. And he explained that, you see, my spiritual master told me that I'm a fool. and I'm not qualified to study Vedanta. And he told me, you should just chant Hare Krishna. So now, we're seeing what happens when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki jai. So we're seeing what happens when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu begins this process which has been given by his spiritual master, and that's where we're beginning. So I saw that I had become mad by chanting the holy name, and I immediately submitted this at the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as an ideal teacher, shows us how a disciple should deal with his spiritual master. Whenever there is doubt regarding any point, he should refer the matter to his spiritual master for clarification. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that while chanting and dancing, he had developed the kind of mad ecstasy that is possible only for a liberated soul. Yet even in his liberated position, he referred everything to his spiritual master whenever there were doubts. Thus, in any condition, even when liberated, we should never think ourselves independent of the spiritual master, but must refer to him as soon as there's some doubt regarding our progressive spiritual life. Kipamacha dila goshai kipatara bala japate japate matra karila pangala. My dear Lord, what kind of mantra have you given me? I have become mad simply by chanting this Maha Mantra. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prays, purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prays in Shikshastakam, Yugaitam nimishena chakshusha prabhavashaitam chunyaitam jagat sarvam Govinda virahe name. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. It is the aspiration of a devotee that while he chants the Hare Krishna mantra, Maha Mantra, his eyes will fill with tears and his voice falters and his heart throbs. These are good signs in chanting the holy name of the Lord. In ecstasy, one should feel the entire world to be vacant without the presence of Govinda. This is the sign of separation from Govinda. In material life, we are all separated from Govinda and are absorbed in material sense gratification. Therefore, when one comes to his senses on the spiritual platform, he becomes so eager to meet Govinda that without Govinda, the entire world becomes a vacant place. Hasaya nashaya more karya krandana eta sune guru hashti barila vachana. Chanting the holy name in ecstasy causes me to dance, laugh, and cry. When my spiritual master heard all this, he smiled and then began to speak. Purport. When a disciple very perfectly makes progress in spiritual life, this gladdens the spiritual master, who then also smiles in ecstasy, thinking, how successful my disciple has become. He feels so glad that he smiles as he enjoys the progress of the disciple, just as a smiling parent enjoys the activities of a child who is trying to stand up or crawl perfectly. Krishna nama mahamanthera eta swabhava ye jape tare Krishna upajaya baba. It is the nature of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra that anyone who chants it immediately develops his loving ecstasy for Krishna. Krishna vishayaka prema parama purushartha yare anga trina tulya chari purusartha. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation are known as the four goals of life. But before love of God at the fifth and highest goal, these appear as insignificant as straw in the street. Panchama purusartha prema nanda amrita sindhu mokshari ananda yara nahi eka bindu. For a devotee who has actually developed bhava, the pleasure derived from dharma, artha, kama, and moksha appears like drops in the presence of the sea. Krishna namir pala prema sarva shastri koi bhagya se prema tomaya kaila udoy. The conclusions of all revealed scriptures is that one should waken his dormant love of Godhead. You are greatly fortunate to have already done so. Premara swabhave kare chitatanu shobha krishnera charana prape upajaya loba. It is a characteristic of love of Godhead that by nature it induces transcendental symptoms in one's body and makes one more and more greedy to achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Prema rasva bhave bhakta hasti kande gai, unmakta hai nache iti uti udai. When one actually develops love of Godhead, he naturally sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes chants, and sometimes runs here and there just like a madman. Sweda kampa roma shashura gara gara vairanya udmada vishadharya garva hashta danya eda bhave prema bhaktir ganarani chai krishnera ananda mrita sagare vasyai. Perspiration, trembling, standing on end of one's bodily hairs, tears, faltering voice, fading complexion, madness, melancholy, patience, pride, joy, and humility. These are the various natural symptoms of ecstatic love of God, which causes a devotee to dance and float in the ocean of transcendental bliss while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Balahaila paile tumi parama purusartha tomara premite ami hailan kritartha. According to the revealed scriptures, if a spiritual master can convert even one soul into a perfectly pure devotee, his mission in life is fulfilled. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati always used to say, even at the expense of all the properties, temples, and mutts that I have, if I could convert even one person into a pure devotee, my mission would be fulfilled. I'll repeat that. Even at the expense of all the properties, temples, and mutts that I have, if I could convert even one person into a pure devotee, my mission would be fulfilled. It is very difficult, however, to understand the science of Krishna, what to speak of developing love of Godhead. Therefore, if by the grace of Lord Chaitanya and spiritual master, a disciple attains the standard of pure devotional service, the spiritual master is very happy. The spiritual master is not actually happy if the disciple brings him money. But when he sees that a disciple is following the regulative principles and advancing in spiritual life, he is very glad and feels obliged to such an advanced disciple. Nacho gao bhakta sange kara sankirtan Krishna nama Krishna nama upadeshe shara sarvajna Krishna nama upadeshe Nacho gao bhakta sange kara sankirtan Krishna nama upadeshe kara sarvajna Krishna nama upadeshe kara My dear child, continue dancing, chanting, and performing Sankirtan in association with devotees. Furthermore, go out and preach the value of chanting Krishna Nam, for by this process you will be able to deliver all fallen souls. It is another ambition of the spiritual master to see his disciples not only chant, dance, and follow the regulative principles, but also preach the Sankirtan movement to others in order to deliver them. For the Krishna consciousness movement is based on the principle that one should become as perfect as possible in devotional service oneself, and also preach the cult for others' benefits. There are two classes of unalloyed devotees, namely Goshtianandis and Bhajananandis. Bhajananandis refers to one who is satisfied to cultivate devotional service for himself, and Goshtianandi is one who is not satisfied simply to become perfect himself, but wants to see others also take advantage of the holy name of the Lord and advance in spiritual life. The outstanding example is Prahlad Maharaj. When he was offered a benediction by Lord Nrsimhadev, Prahlad Maharaj said, Naivyo dvije paraduratavartharanyas tadvidya ganyam ahamritamagdachita sochetato vimuktache maya sukaya brahma udhato vimudam. My dear Lord, I have no problems and want no benediction from you, because I am quite satisfied to chant your holy name. This is sufficient for me, because whenever I chant, I immediately merge in an ocean of transcendental bliss. I only lament to see others bereft of your love. They are rotting in material activities for transient material pleasure, and spoiling their lives all day and night, simply for sense gratification, with no attachment for love of Godhead. I am simply lamenting for them and devising various plans to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains in his Anubhashya, a person who has attracted the attention of the spiritual master by his sincere service likes to dance and chant with similarly developed Krishna-conscious persons. The spiritual master authorizes such a devotee to deliver fallen souls in all parts of the world. Those who are not advanced prefer to chant the Hare Krishna mantra in a solitary place. Such activities constitute, in the language of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a type of cheating process in the sense that they imitate the activities of exalted personalities like Haridas Thakur. One should not attempt to imitate such exalted devotees. Rather, everyone should endeavor to preach the code of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in all parts of the world, and thus become successful in spiritual life. One who is not very expert in preaching may chant in a secluded place, avoiding bad association. For one who is actually advanced, preaching and meeting people who are not engaged in devotional service are not disadvantages. The devotee gives the non-devotees his association, but is not affected by their misbehavior. Thus the activities of a pure devotee, even those who are bereft of love of Godhead, get a chance to become devotees of the Lord one day. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur advises that one should discuss the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam beginning with Nai tat sam sujare jatu manasyapi hi aishvaram. The following verse and the following verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anashakta savishayan yadatam upayunjataha nirbandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. One should not imitate the activities of great personalities. One should be detached from material enjoyment and should accept everything in connection with Krishna's service. Chaitanya Charitamrita Nitya Karapan Dhyaha Hoite Premananda Bhakti Tattva Gyan. So we have such a gift that Srila Prabhupada worked so hard to translate the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Otherwise, it would have just remained in the Bengali language. But because of Srila Prabhupada's pushing his disciples, in 1974, Prabhupada was in Los Angeles. And when he arrived in Los Angeles, he first spoke the verse, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai Ki. When he first arrived in Los Angeles, he spoke the verse, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva 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 Gantiranyata. And then he said that we don't make anything up. We simply repeat what we've heard from the previous teachers. And then he went to go on to explain the process of disciplic succession, beginning with Vyasadeva, Narada Muni, and then Madhvacharya, descending all the way to his humble self. At least that's how he was presenting. And then he said something very profound, in which he continued the legacy of the parampara. He said, so this is why I keep saying, where is book? Where is book? Where is book? Because I could understand that printing books was very dear to my spiritual master. He gave his own account. How Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, if it was up to me, I would sell all the marble in these temples and simply print books. Everyone's arguing about where they're staying in the temple. But if I had it my way,
I say we sell all the marble in the temple and we simply print books. And then he told Srila Prabhupada that if you ever get money, print books. So Srila Prabhupada himself received the order of the Guru Parampara. And then Srila Prabhupada, empowering his disciples and empowering generations to come, he said that this is why I'm stressing, where is book, where is book, where is book? So print as many books in as many languages and distribute them throughout the whole world. And in this way, the Krishna consciousness movement will expand automatically. So Srila Prabhupada has a legacy which he has handed over to us, and that is the legacy of the Brihat Mridanga. The Brihat Mridanga is a drum which the length of its amplification cannot be measured. The Brihat Mridanga can enter into places which we can hardly begin to imagine. So what is the qualification for one to beat this Brihat Mridanga? What does one need to cultivate inside of themselves? What does the focus of a Sankirtan devotee need to be? There's a verse that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur recites in one of his writings, and he says as follows: Chala dharma charikara satya dharma mati chatuvargya tyagi dara nitya prema gati. That one should completely abandon dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, and make the only goal of one's life Krishna prema. This is the qualification for being a Sankirtan devotee, is that your only fixation in life should be the attainment of Krishna prema. And then simultaneously, you are constantly meditating on how do I give other people the opportunity to connect with this process. So this is the definition of sadhana bhakti that has been given by Srila Rupa Goswami Pad. Krita sadhya bhavat sadhya bhavasa sadhanabhita nityasirasya bhavasya prakritam hridya sadhyata. That within the heart of every living entity is this potential for bhava. Potential means that it could be brought out or it may not be brought out. So sadhana, according to Rupa Goswami, are those activities which are done by the senses for the purpose of bringing out bhava. So sadhana is activities such as chanting the holy names of Krishna, reading transcendental literatures, serving the spiritual master, engaging in various activities with the body, and not only body, also engaging the mind in contemplating the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what are those activities which will quickly enhance our progress toward prema? If one is a Sankirtan devotee, if one is existing in the Sankirtan movement, then they should be developing the symptoms similar to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which allowed him to preach the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. And that is the symptoms of pure love of God. And this is what allowed Srila Prabhupada to preach so enthusiastically and so powerfully, is that he said that I've simply depended on the words of my spiritual master, and I've never deviated from a moment from his instructions. This is the sadhana which brings about love of God, and this is why Srila Prabhupada is so effective, is because he never deviated from the instructions of his spiritual master, and because of that, he was constantly situated in the topmost rung of devotional service, prema bhakti. And this is the greatest preaching strategy for expanding the Sankirtan movement. As Srila Prabhupada is explaining in this purport that one should become as perfect as possible in devotional service oneself and also preach the cult for others' benefit. So what is the qualification for preaching the Sankirtan movement all over the world? Qualification is dependence on the words of the spiritual master, and by depending on the words of the spiritual master, one becomes empowered with a very advanced stage of devotional consciousness. And through this advanced stage of devotional consciousness, people become completely enchanted by the character and conduct and activities of this particular devotee that's wandering the world. We see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was going through the Jarikananda forest, he was so immersed in Krishna prema that everyone in the jungle was beginning to chant and dance. The tigers, the deer were embracing each other and even kissing. And the bears were dancing and everyone was dancing. And you can actually go to Jarikananda forest still, and you can see the tracks for 3 kilometers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet and the feet of the animals for 3 kilometers of where they chanted and danced. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so absorbed in ecstatic love that ecstatic love permeated the entire atmosphere, and it completely changed the hearts of everyone who came in contact with him. And when he was going through South India, when he was going from Vrindavan to Prayagraj and to Varanasi, he was simply chanting and dancing, and anyone who who saw him also became infected with love of God. So this is the activities of the Sankirtan movement, is that we become intoxicated with Krishna Prema through this process of Nacho Gao Bhakta Sange Kara Sankirtan, by staying in the association of devotees. Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hoya Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Preme Teno Puna Mukhya Anga. That by being in the association of devotees and chanting and dancing without any offense, simply for the purpose of glorifying Krishna, simply for the purpose of glorifying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then one becomes completely overwhelmed with ecstatic love. And then when one goes out and preaches the Sankirtan movement, people become attracted practically spontaneously. Srila Prabhupada has a purport in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he explains that by the desire of the pure devotee, Krishna inspires the general populace from within their heart to take to Krishna consciousness. So we have a very grave responsibility on our heads that has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada, and that is for us to become perfect in our own devotional service, and then simultaneously go out and give Krishna consciousness to the world. And of the two, it's extremely important that we ourselves become pure devotees, because we have to remember that not only are we participating in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities, but we're also recipients of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities. Sometimes in the course of preaching, we can become so overwhelmed with the various services that we have that we sometimes will forget about the essential quality of purity that's needed in order to continue on. And we simultaneously may forget that we ourselves are recipients of mercy. And as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says in this purport previous to the one that we're speaking about, even at the expense of all the properties, temples, and mats that I have, if I could attract even one person into becoming a pure devotee, my mission would be fulfilled. So being recipients of the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requires us to also become perfect in our own devotional service. And when one makes it a point to organize their activities for the purpose of attaining bhava as recommended by Srila Rupa Goswami, and then simultaneously takes up the preaching activities of the Krishna consciousness movement, then their advancement becomes completely accelerated. It's explained that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's explained that rice and dal are both nutritious. But when one takes in the process of hearing and chanting, and one goes out and gives Krishna consciousness to other people, then this combination, it acts as an infusion. And there's synergy between the rice and the dal, and it becomes 30% more nutritious. So in the same way, when we go out and we distribute books, when we go out and we teach people about Krishna consciousness, and then simultaneously we come back and we follow this instruction of Nacho Gao Bhakta Sange Kara Sankirtan. We come back and we associate with the devotees in a mood of Dadati Pratigrinati Gunyam Adyakti Prichiti. When we associate with loving exchanges amongst each other, and then simultaneously engage in the process of hearing and chanting, then what happens is Satam Prasangam Mamavirya Samvido Bhavanti Hrit Karna Rasayanakata Tab Josna Asu Pavargavartmani Shada Ratir Bhakti Anu Kramisyati. That by staying in that association, then advancement becomes very rapid. We begin to taste the fruits of love of Godhead ourselves. And then when we go out, we simply distribute the remnants of those fruits to everyone that we meet. So it's important that within the movement, we're working very, very hard to build our house of prema by solidifying ourselves in sambandha gyan, by solidifying ourselves in Abhideya Gyan and solidifying ourselves in Prayojana Gyan. And by becoming aware of all these various tattvas and then simultaneously assimilating the essence of these tattvas and applying them in our life, then when we go out, we help lay the foundation for the entire world to build their respective house of prema. As Srila Prabhupada said, he built a house that the world could live in. So we're simply inviting everyone to come live in this house of prema that's been constructed by Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But first, we ourselves have to live inside of that house. So the activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are completely magnanimous. They're completely overwhelming. Anandamaya Lila Vigrahaya Himamba Divya Chavisundaraya Tasmat Maha Prema Rasa Pradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. That I offer my obeisances to that beautiful form of Lord Chaitanya, who has a form composed of condensed blissfulness and who is shining with a beautiful golden effulgence, and who is engaged in the activities of Tasmai Mahaprema Rasa Pradaya, bestowing upon the world the mellow of Prema Bhakti. So when we come together and we read the pages of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we should feel a transformation taking place. We should feel that we're becoming attracted to the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We're developing a desire that I myself want to enter into these pastimes. Tanama rupa charitasa sakirtananu smrid yor karmena rasanam manasi niyoja tistan braje tananuragi jananugami kalam yanet akilam itupadesha saram. That we begin to develop a desire that the only thing I want to do is organize my entire life around this principle of hearing and chanting and following in the footsteps of those devotees who are completely perfect in their service of devotion. And when we organize our life around this principle of hearing and chanting and giving Krishna consciousness to other people, we become living representatives of the Guru Parampara. And that's what the Sankirtan movement needs in order to expand. It's not that the Sankirtan movement stops at Srila Prabhupada. The Sankirtan movement is expanded through Srila Prabhupada through the medium of his representatives and his grand representatives. So we should have a single pointed desire to become holy places of pilgrimage everywhere we go. As stated by Vidura, as stated by Maharaj Yudhisthira, Bhavavidad Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirtha Kurvanti Tirthani Swatastena Gataprata. That by being connected with this process of Sankirtan, by being connected with this process of hearing and chanting, then we are becoming living, walking holy pilgrimage places. And everywhere we go, we're simply fulfilling the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who said that my true desire, he was once asked by someone, he said, you know, these temples that you're building, they're so beautiful, they're so wonderful. You should build them all over the world. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, my real mission is to establish a temple in the heart of everyone. So we should become living places of pilgrimage. And everywhere we go, we're simply establishing, we're doing deity installations in the hearts of everyone that we meet by giving them Srila Prabhupada's books, by giving them the holy name, and by giving them the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when we give this mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we ourselves become recipients of this mercy. Just like Maharaj Prataparudra, he took up the service of sweeping for Lord Jagannath. And by that small menial service rendered for the pleasure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he received the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is what we need in order to make advancement. Is it that we can't just expect through our own application of sadhana that we're going to come to the ultimate stage of devotional service. Because the very definition of devotional service, pure devotional service in Bhava Bhakti, is that it descends. Shuddha Sattva Visheshatmam Prema Suryam Susamyabhak Ruchibi Syad Mayashranya Kritaso Bhava Uchate. That Bhava Bhakti is that which descends into the heart. It's a ray of the Shuddha Sattva. And when that ray of prema descends into the heart of the practitioner, that heart becomes coagulated and awakens various tastes of devotional service. Specifically, one's unique relationship with Krishna awakens. This is the definition of bhava. So it's not that simply through our own sadhana that we will attain perfection, but the essence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, the essence of being a Gaura Bhakta, is to be constantly begging and crying for this opportunity to receive this ray of prema. And this ray of prema will only descend if we're engaged cent% in the missionary activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then simultaneously amongst ourselves, engaging in the Gaura Bhajan of crying in desperation for a drop of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Hare Krishna. So we have about 15 minutes left, so we can open it up for discussion. One of the things my spiritual master says is that instead of just having it be open for questions, we simultaneously make it open for reflections, because questions can be difficult sometimes. So reflection is anything that stuck out to you that really resonated with your heart, that you feel that if you were to walk out on the streets of Bangalore and someone were to ask you, what was an American guy saying to all of you in there? You can tell him something. And then a question is anything that expands the vibration of what was spoken, and so we can keep this Ishta Goshti continuing. Hare Krishna. Questions, comments? Yes, Prabhu.
I think sometimes the beginning stages of our practice of Krishna.
We have another microphone for. Oh my God. Okay, I'll repeat. Don't worry. It might take a long time. Okay.
Hare Krishna. To ask sometimes the beginning stages of Krishna consciousness, one may feel like that I'm not qualified to do preaching. I am myself struggling in my practice. And my regular sadhana only is not able to do properly. And how will I be able to do preaching? Achar and prachar. My achar is not good because it's standard expected. But how will I do prachar then? Because my achar is not so good.
Yeah. So, Sanatana Goswami tells Haridas Thakur, Achar Prachar Kara Babi Dui Kar Tumi Sarva Guru Tumi Jagatera Arya. That you, Haridas Thakur, are perfect because you can preach and you know how to behave properly. So your question is, we're not like that. So how are we supposed to preach? Well, one thing is, like I was saying, our process is a process of grace and a process of mercy. And the more unqualified we feel, the more qualified we are for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. So we should accept the order that's coming through the Guru Parampara very humbly, and not feel that we're qualified to engage in the missionary activities. But because this thing is being asked of me, I have to do it. And then simultaneously, in our own sadhana, we're simply begging for the qualification to preach. And when one situates themselves in this disposition of being extremely humble in relationship to the order of the spiritual master, and even if one feels that they're not able to do it now, Srila Prabhupada said in 1966 in New York that you simply say, how can I do? How can I do? How can I do? Simply meditating, how can I be of service? How can I execute this instruction? And sincerely contemplating, how can I become qualified? And then within one's own heart, crying desperately for the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just like Srila Prabhupada, before he came to America, a few days before he entered the Jaladuta, which, by the way, that dock that Srila Prabhupada left from is still there, and you can go to it, and you can distribute books on the bridge that it looks over. There's a bridge that you can see the dock from, and you can distribute books on that bridge, and it's an ecstatic experience. I recommend everyone in the Krishna consciousness movement do it. You go to that bridge, and you remember Srila Prabhupada leaving the Jaladuta with practically nothing except a trunk of books. Imagine that, feeling completely alone, going to a country that you've never been to. Imagine how Srila Prabhupada felt. But because he felt completely dependent to be successful, he felt completely dependent on his spiritual master in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was a success. So before Srila Prabhupada left from that glorious tirtha, which, by the way, if anyone has any money, we should seriously look into buying that dock and make it into a temple. Because we can all derive great benefit from that particular place by going there and praying. So anyways, before Srila Prabhupada left from the Jaladuta, he went to Shantipur. And he was sitting in the back of the temple, just crying and crying and crying and crying. And then this pujari had recognized Srila Prabhupada from years before. Prabhupada used to go there and chant in that temple in Shantipur. And this pujari remembered him, and he said, I remember you from many years ago. What's your name? And he said, my name is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My name is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. I am a very unqualified disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he's given me an impossible task. And so he was simply praying for Advaita Acharya's mercy. He was sitting at Radha Damodar praying for the mercy of Rupa Goswami. So Srila Prabhupada's our Acharya. So what does Acharya mean? It means one whose example is perfect. So we see that Srila Prabhupada was always begging, crying for the opportunity to execute the mission of his spiritual master. So in the same way, although we may feel unqualified, our qualification is our lack of qualification. And when we cry in that mood to the previous acharyas, when we cry in that mood in front of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then through their potency, and then simply repeating the message of the Guru Parampara in a straightforward and honest way, then the Guru Parampara will inspire the hearts of the general populace to take to Krishna consciousness, not because of our own doing, but because of our simply trying to represent them in the mood of a servant. Then the world will become Krishna conscious. But it's not through our own strength that we're able to do anything. And we should always remember in the process of preaching that we're not proprietors, we're simply facilitators. We're simply facilitating people to be engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and for them to take advantage of that mercy, because we ourselves are recipients of that mercy, and we are duty-bound out of love to give this opportunity to others on behalf of the Guru Parampara. Hare Krishna. Questions? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. You have to switch it on.
Thank you for your wonderful lecture. I am really inspired by your lecture. Sambandha Gnan, can I get some more idea? What is that?
Sambandha Gyan.
Yeah.
So, Sambandha Gyan is understanding the simple principle of Krishna bole se jeev anahir bahir mukh atayeva mayatare samsara dukh. And jivera surup hoy krishnera nitya das. So it's understanding that we are situated, Krishna has various energies, parashaktirva vadaivisuyate, that Krishna expands himself in various ways, principally through the antaranga shakti, which is the spiritual potency, or the chit shakti, and through the bahiranga shakti, which is the external energy. And the external energy is characterized by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita as Bhumir Napanalo Vayu Kahamanu Burevacha Ahankara Ityame Binam Prakritirashtata. The earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These things are characterized as the external energy of Krishna. They're the separated energy of Krishna. And then Krishna in the next verse of the Bhagavad Gita says, Apareyam idastvanyam prakritim vidimeparam jiva bhuta mahabaho yayidam dadate jagat. That beyond this unconscious external energy of mine, there's a superior energy which is known as the jiva bhuta. This is the jiva tattva, or the tatastha shakti. So the tatastha shakti is situated in between the external energy of Krishna and the internal energy of Krishna, and is subjected to being controlled and influenced by both of them according to the desire that we have. So when one makes the choice to turn away from Krishna, Krishna bahir moka, boga vanchakare, nikatastana mayatare, chapadiyadare. That as soon as one turns their face, Krishna bahir mukha, that means the living entity becomes fixed on the bahir ranga shakti, the external energy of Krishna. And as soon as the living entity does that, it becomes captured by the Maya Shakti, the illusory potency of the Lord. And then within that illusory potency, accepts the various conditions of life. Purusha prakriti stohi, bhokte prakritir jangunan, karanam gunasango syat sarasad yoni janmasu. And then carrying these various conceptions of life, one enters into various different species of life, in which one acquires a particular set of senses according to the conditioning they've acquired. Sotram chakshus prasanam scha rasanam griham evacha adityasyam manaschayam visayanu pasevate. That according to how you've interacted with this world, the material energy awards you a particular body. But when one comes to the human form of life, labante brahmanir labas sadurlaba idamba husambhavante manusya arthadam nityam apihadira. Turnam yatet anapatet anumritya yavan nisheshaya visalakal tabatavatasya. That when one comes to the human form of life, it's an extremely rare opportunity. And what is rare about that opportunity is that although it's temporary, and although it's subjected to death at any moment, it offers one the opportunity to experience and achieve the greatest artha. And what is that artha? Prema pumartho mahan. So the foundation of that prema pumartho mahan, the foundation of that fifth purushartha, is this understanding that my eternal position is not have to do with anything in this world. My eternal position is that of a servant of Krishna. So I'm not a man, I'm not a woman, I'm not a computer engineer, I'm not an anthropologist, I'm not this thing or that thing, President of the United States. My only identity in this world is, in any circumstance, is that I am an eternal servant of Krishna. So this is the foundation of Sambandha Gyan. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in his Harinam Chintamani that in order to go beyond this stage of Nama Bhas, one should be chanting the holy name in Surya Nama Bhas, which is when a ray of Shuddhanam is coming through Nama Bhas. Just like on a cloudy day, sometimes you get a little ray of sunshine. So in the same way, in order to get that ray of Nama Bhas, one needs to be chanting the holy names with Sambandha Gyan, with this understanding that I'm a servant of Krishna. So when one chants the names of Krishna with understanding our own position and then understanding Krishna's position as the Shaktiman, that Krishna is in control of this Antaranga Shakti, this Tatastha Shakti, and this Bahiranga Shakti, then one can feel completely dependent on Krishna, that Krishna can make all arrangements for my being elevated out of this material conditioning. So, Sambandha Gyan, in short, means to understand yourself, to understand material nature, and to understand Krishna, and to understand karma, and to understand time. This is the whole basis of the Bhagavad Gita. So knowledge and Sambandha Gyan is only this, to understand that Krishna is great and I'm his servant, and that everything in this world is ultimately controlled and operated by Krishna, And then Abhideya Gyan is engaging in the process which reconnects us with Krishna. And then Prayojana Tattva is understanding our ultimate goal of knowledge is to develop love for Krishna. Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabanoi Shravanaya Chuta Chitte Karanaya Udoy. That the ultimate goal of life is to be engaged in hearing and chanting about Krishna 24 hours, 24/7. This is the Upadesha Sharam given by Rupa Goswami. And by being connected with that process, love of God will easily arise within the heart of the living entity.
Thank you so much, Guruji. I'm very grateful.
Hare Krishna.
This we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's preaching to Mayavadis completely.
Yeah.
And we also see Prabhupada about Mayavadis, not much.
Oh yeah, Prabhupada wasn't very fond of Mayavadis. And we shouldn't be either. What's that?
How we should approach and like my other question is like when Prabhupada was there,
Yeah.
so there was much focus on speaking against what Mayavadis did. People have the thinking of Mayavadis. So Prabhupada used to counter it in
Yeah.
many lectures.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's not very much seen. And, it's like there are so many other societies and like that which are propagating Mayavadi philosophy. But what we should do?
Well, Prabhupada said we should kick them in the face with boot. But we see through Prabhupada's practical example that yes, he went out of his way to pick apart Mayavadi philosophy. But many times on a public forum, he would not mention people's names. So it's better that we become conversant in tattva and be able to understand the complete structure of Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta, which within that Siddhanta is all the arguments in order to pick apart Mayavadi philosophy. Just by reading this chapter, actually, if we were to go on reading, there's purports which are extremely long, where Prabhupada goes through very systematically tearing apart Mayavadi philosophy. But Prabhupada was also extremely expert in dealing with people when Mayavad philosophy would be brought up. And we see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also very expert. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he dealt with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and when he dealt with Prakashananda Saraswati, he took a very humble position. So we definitely have a chivalrous spirit when it comes to dealing with misconceptions. But simultaneously, the attitude of a Vaishnava can never be there. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, when a great Digvijay Pandit came to Vrindavan, they told him, I want to debate with you. And they said, no, that's okay. And then he said, well, sign this form. He said, no problem. And he signed it off. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami weren't so interested in simply debating for the sake of debating. But you see that Jiva Goswami, for the sake of defending his guru, went and defeated this particular person. And in Srila Prabhupada's case, we see that he knew how to deal with people in a very expert way. So it's very time, place, and circumstance. But the best defense is a good offense. So we should become very conversant in presenting the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the philosophy of our acharyas. And when we're fully conversant in that, when Mayavad philosophy comes in, we're able to completely deconstruct it in front of someone. So we should be very conversant in tattva when we're preaching. And simultaneously be very conscientious in our circumstances and not simply go out defeating people simply for the sake of creating enmity, because Prabhupada says that people are already envious. We don't need to make them more envious. So by studying the life of Prabhupada, we can see how he dealt with Mayavadi philosophy. He is very heavy about the ideas of Mayavadi philosophy. And even he was very heavy with particular individuals when the issue came up. But simultaneously, he was very expert in dealing with each circumstance. So we simultaneously need to know how to be expert in dealing with circumstances. But definitely, whenever there's a trace of Mayavad, it should be rooted out at the very beginning. Because as Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Maharaj once said, that wherever there's a hint of Mayavad, it should be rooted out from the beginning. Because wherever there's any trace of Mayavad, pure bhakti cannot be preached in full force. So we should be very expert in understanding how to pick apart Mayavad philosophy in such a way that we can simultaneously maintain a cool head while doing it. Because there's a way in which you can, attack different philosophies, but a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, and you can lead a man to wisdom, but you can't make him think. So these are various ideas on the topic. To get a complete idea of what this topic means, you can read the book Speaking Strongly in Srila Prabhupada's Service by Srila Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, and he deals with these various points about dealing with deviant philosophies in a straightforward but simultaneously thoughtful way. Yes, Prabhu.
In starting you said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt with that Mayavadi sannyasis in humility.
Yeah, correct.
Nowadays, if we see that being too much humble, that may be not good for that dignity, because others may take benefit of that humility. So how to, because...
Well, humility doesn't mean being a doormat. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was extremely humble. He would refer to his disciples as, whenever anyone would pay obeisances to him, he would say, Dasosmi, I'm simply your servant. And he never considered that he accepted any disciples. He considered all of his disciples his own gurus. But simultaneously, when it came to dealing with deviant philosophies which would completely ruin someone's spiritual progress, he was uncompromising. And so was Srila Prabhupada. They were completely uncompromising. But that doesn't mean they weren't humble. Srila Prabhupada was completely humble. So humility does not mean an inferiority complex. Humility means accepting the order of the spiritual master as one's life and soul and doing whatever it takes in order to establish that mission within the world. That's real humility. It's not just simply, yes, Prabhu, yes, Prabhu. Humility means representing the spiritual master in an honest and straightforward way. And whatever it takes in order to represent that message, one is willing to take. There's a quote by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. I'm not remembering it completely, but I'll try it my best. That for the service of my spiritual master, I am willing to act in the most gratuitous and brutal way in order to represent my spiritual master. So does that mean he's not humble? No. Real humility means to consider oneself as low as a blade of grass, and to consider oneself as low as a blade of grass means to accept the dust of the previous acharyas on one's head. And to accept the dust of the previous acharyas on one's head means to execute their mission with full intensity and vigor. That's real humility. It's not an external show. Hare Krishna.
Just thank Prabhuji for his valuable association with such exhaustive explanation on Chaitanya Leela, with so many shlokas and wonderful illustrations and so much of explanation and reading of Prabhupada reports. Actually, I should represent this mode of being exhaustively absorbed in Prabhupada reports. Prabhuji fully represented that very